And ZANU-PF leadership as a party, they are not trusting their own MPs to vote according to their conscience. There's a fear within that leadership, a fear of a possibility of an internal upheaval, an internal dissent. They are afraid. They are quivering in their high tops. They want this amendment to pass, not because it is right, but they want it to pass because it is being commanded. That is what they are doing. And if you don't see that, there's something wrong with you. When you see an amendment being pushed through under these conditions, where the MPs are being told that you are not free to vote the way you want, or free to vote according to what the constituents want. You cannot vote in secret, and you cannot be independent in your voting. Then the very aspect of legitimacy of the amendment becomes questionable. We've been questioning this under various topics. But this one here is profound because it is speaking to something that is deeper. It's becoming questionable, not to question. Okay, we've been questioning the legality of this thing. Now that they've done whatever it is that they've done, and they want to push this thing in a way that is looking as if it is legit. If it is legit, yes, the numbers have to be counted. But when it comes to the aspect of democracy, they are going to be found wanting. The bill is already a controversial bill. Everybody knows that. The bill is raising so many questions about the presidential powers, election timing, and the manipulation of the constitutional safeguards that exist in our democracy. But now, when they are saying that we are removing that secret vote because they fear that people may be bought, they want to remove the secret vote as a safeguard for satisfying themselves that nobody is going to be bought. Then the controversy surrounding CAB 3, I'm afraid, will only deepen. Because the issue here, ladies and gentlemen, is it is no longer about just what is being amended, but it is now about how the amendment is being forced through. I'm always speaking about the moment. But the moment now forces us to ask so many questions. Because if an MP cannot vote freely on the constitution, then who is this constitution for anyway? They did put out an argument to say, oh, we are not going to be doing the referendum because we are a parliamentary democracy. Representation in parliament, those who are in parliament are representing the people of Zimbabwe. So if the people of Zimbabwe were going to be rejecting this via a referendum, the people of Zimbabwe, if they were going to be rejecting this via a referendum, it means this process will make that constitution no longer for the people of Zimbabwe. If parliament cannot exercise its independence, then what then remains of this representative democracy that they talk about? When you see Ziyambi coming out, speaking for the party or speaking on behalf of the party, and standing there sending a message that we are going to be publicly policing you as members so that a vote can be secured. What does that say about the amendment itself? Those are the questions that we need to be asking. Because we is way past just discussing CAB 3. We are discussing the future of constitutionalism in Zimbabwe. Our discussion is now where the parliament still represents the people of Zimbabwe. Our discussion is now on whether that August House has become an extension of party command. Is this where we are as a people? Or he said, yes, there's nothing amiss, there. Because us as a political party, and also as provided in the constitution, there is a thing that is called a chief whip, who can whip the party members into line. He even said, munorohwa neshamhu ine munyu sekutaura kunoita president. A whipping system, ladies and gentlemen, is legitimate. Because this is where we need to make the distinction. And this is where distinction becomes important. A whipping system is legitimate, but it is legitimate for ordinary legislation, not for a constitutional amendment. Here's why. If you want to compare, even go to South Africa, the one that they are saying, oh yes, we want to bring South Africa into Zimbabwe. There's always a demarcation line. There's always a bright line between ordinary views where party discipline is asked to be normal. But when it comes to a constitutional amendment, MPs are expected to be exercising their independent judgment. Because a constitution is not a party document. Constitutions are not party documents. They are a national, they are a national thing. They belong to the nation. ZANU-PF is not Zimbabwe. So by whipping MPs on a constitutional amendment, that act alone undermines the idea that the constitution belongs to the people of Zimbabwe, not to a political party. So the key point here, ladies and gentlemen, that I'm trying to drive home is to say a party can whip on policy, but a party cannot legitimately whip on the rules of the political system itself. Because ZANU-PF wants to rewrite these rules that affect it as a political party by rewriting the political system, the rules of the political system, and yet they're only a player. So surely, if they want to be doing that, then everybody has to be involved because they are not the only political party in Zimbabwe. When you go to the elections, we don't vote ZANU-PF alone. There is a contest. Right now in that Augusta House, there are MPs from opposition. They were voted for under a political system. And any attempt to change that political system through whipping cannot be taken to be legitimate. Because a constitutional amendment in itself requires free consent, not coerced compliance. And as I said, under Section 328, there is an assumption that MPs, when it comes to a constitutional amendment, they'll be free to vote because amending the constitution is the most serious act a parliament can undertake. So if you then start to be telling your MPs how to vote, that your vote will be public, that any dissent will be punished, then the vote is no longer a democratic expression. It becomes a command performance, as I said earlier on. So the key point here is to say a coerced vote is not a constitutional vote. If you're coercing people to vote or to behave in a certain way with regards to a constitutional amendment, then that is no longer a constitutional vote. You are simply showing force. You are simply demonstrating your power. The whipping system, as we borrowed it from Westminster, is a system that exists to coordinate policy, not to suppress conscience. And that is important. A chief whip, if you choose or if you select a chief whip, you are just saying, we are giving you the mandate to be organizing our party strategy in parliament to ensure that there's going to be attendance in parliament. And you want to ensure that there's cohesion on party policy. But their role is not to override conscience. Their role is not to override constituents' interests because they are serving our interest in there. They are serving the interests of their constituencies, the constituencies that voted them into power. Yes, they might have won under a ZANU-PF ticket, but remember, in that constituency, when it comes to such matters like this, as we witnessed in 2000 with the vote no, even people who would have voted a certain political party into power within a constituency can change, their mind. So whipping should never be used to override a constitutional duty and to override the separation of powers. When you get to Garepi, using the whip as an instrument of fear rather than coordination, then that Mount Hampton House or the August House ceases to be a legislative body and it becomes an extension of Emerson Mnangagwa. That is what it becomes. And we should not sit idly when such things are happening. Because in a normal democracy, the public voting, like what thing, Ziambi Squared, is talking about, it is not a problem. In a normal democracy, it is not a problem. This one here that is saying, oh, yes, we want to, public voting, it is not a problem because in a normal democracy, an MP can dissent without losing their livelihood. An MP can go against their political party and they can never be affected. They can still get their sitting allowance. They can still return if they were given if they were given money to buy a constituent's house or a house outside of their constituents, they can still retain all that. They will not even be fearing that an X is going to be is going to fall upon my head. They will not they will not be fearful of anything. Even the car that they were given, they will not fear that the car will be taken away. They will not fear that.